I want to tell you a little bit about testing.
Awesome. I'm really surprised that you're covering this, but okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. Lately, you've been covering the testing
I
articles.
know. Isn't that my role now? No, go ahead.
Yeah,
This is great. Tell us about it.
So, this is a person named Carolyn that wrote an article called "From 1 to 10,000 Test Cases in Under an Hour: A Beginner's Guide to Property."
That's productive. And imagine if Carolyn was getting paid by the test, right? Like, we're evaluating your bonus for the year. Like, I wrote 5 times as many tests as anyone else, and I just started this month.
Heck yeah.
Anyway,
I would totally use, if I was paid by the test case, I would definitely use hypothesis on every project.
All right, so how did she do this? What is this property-based testing?
Okay, so hopefully people have heard of property-based testing, but it is it's as opposed to like what do we call it? Example-based testing. So and this is kind of how she goes through this discussion. The article is really just a really excellent introduction to property-based testing and using hypothesis. And she's using hypothesis in the example, but the intent is just property-based testing because it's the same sort of strategy with every other type of property-based testing library. She just happens to be using hypothesis and Python. So that's nice. But she starts off with a unit test example of she has like a string sort or not a string sort, but a list sorting thing. And if you were doing example-based testing, you just pick a few example test cases where you would take the input and what the sorted output should look like, and you run it through the function and make sure the output assert that it's equal. Or equal to the expected one. So, how would you do this with property-based testing? And before she goes in, and she does give an example of how to write some sort of test like that in property-based testing, but she stops and pauses and talks about the kind of the different mindset. You can't test against an exact example because you don't know what example is coming in. So you have to think about properties. So like on a list sort thing, you don't have the exact answer, but you could check to make sure that the length should be the same, and that you can use sets on both the input and output to make sure that the contents of both are identical. And then you can go through the answer and make sure that element wise, every element I is less than or equal to I plus 1. There's ways to test sort without just knowing the answer. But it takes a mind shift a little bit. And I think actually that's one of the benefits of property-based testing is thinking in terms of that also. I also think it's nice that she talks about how this isn't a replacement for example-based testing. It is a complement to it. And so you can mix them together. Then she goes on to introduce some of the aspects of hypothesis, like there's some cool strategies like sum lists and sum integers, and being able to set the max examples so you can set how many, and that's where you can just set it to 10,000 and wham, you have 10,000 test cases right away. And just let hypothesis come up with the examples. The real meat of the article, which I really appreciate, is just the hard part of property-based testing isn't some of it's the syntax, and she does cover the syntax on how to get this done. But it's also just how to think about the properties. Coming up with what properties to test for is the hard part. And so taking a little time to talk about that, I think this is a great thing. I'm also glad she threw in that one of the things you should check for with property-based testing is making sure exceptions that get raised are expected exceptions. So if you throw garbage in or different cases that don't make sense, you should know what kind of exceptions are going to come out, and that this can be caught with your tests with hypothesis. And then also a great use for all of this is to implement whatever functionality you wanted in a very simplistic but possibly slow or memory hoggy way or something. So and then you can compare the elegant version and the slow version within the tests to make sure that they come up with the same answer. This is also great if you're doing a refactoring. You can refactor part of your system and make sure that the old and new way act the same. So it's just a good introduction to all of this.
Yeah, and property-based testing you're right, it's such a mind shift, and I don't know, I haven't fully embraced it yet, but I feel like there's probably some places where it would really be interesting and useful, and I probably should just look into it. I don't know, I get stuck in my ways, and then I keep going that way. At the end, she talks about if you're not using Python, what options you have as well, which is kind of cool, right? So it's like, hey, hypothesis is cool in Python, but if you're on TypeScript, we got fast check. We're on .NET. They don't have dashes or A's or T's, so there's FS check. And in Java, there's this and C++ and Rust and so on. So yeah, if it looks like you could use the same thinking and ideas across different parts of your stack if you're having different technologies in there.
This is another example of if it shows up in every language, it's probably something you should be paying attention to. So
that's a good rule of thumb. It's like, yeah, if I see it all over the place, right? This is a general CS sort of thing that's important. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else I like about going through stuff like this is you come across things that you didn't know about, right? For example, you'd think that I would know about JSON. It seems pretty simple, like the JavaScript object notation. But apparently there's like a JSON 5 as well, which allows things like comments and whatnot, and multi-line strings and single quotes and elements that are not quoted for the keys and so on. And there's a whole cool library for JSON 5 support, as if you want to have like a little bit more human-friendly JSON.
I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah, neither did I. And I was just like, why can't I put a comment in JSON? This is driving me crazy. So what I do is I have like a field that says comment or like double slash in quotes. And then I have the string that is the comment, because you can't actually have comments, but you can have ignored keys and values. So that's how I have comments in my JSON. But anyway, she talks about using the JSON 5 library that's part of Python to support that. Or not, it's not built in, but it's a Python library you can use to do that. Thank you for watching this segment of the Python Bytes podcast. This video was made during the recording of the full episode. Visit pythonbytes.fm and get the whole story. Subscribe to the podcast and get the entire episode delivered to your phone. Please support our work by taking one of the courses at pythonbytes.fm/courses or learning PyTest with Brian's book at pythonbytes.fm/PyTest. Finally, visit our sponsor shown on the screen here. Visit the link on the screen and get the special offer for Python Bytes and YouTube listeners. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.